Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We would like you to buy car. Not the one that you're thinking of, though. So first we'd like to introduce you. To your left is Komal and Marlene, and then Samantha, and me, myself, and I, Rudolph. And we're presenting to you the world's largest fertilizer producer in the world, Potash Corp.
Alright, so we will begin with a brief history of the company. Then we will talk about why the fertilizer industry is growing and is important and why you should want to be a part of it. Then we will talk about why potash is one of the major companies and why you should invest in. Then we will do the financial analysis, our forecast, and then we will close with the conclusion, recommendation, and questions.
So during 1950s, the potash industry was established in Saskatchewan. During that time period, there was other potash mines which were established in Saskatchewan, encouraged by the government, as the government saw it as a new promising field in the industry through subsidies. During 1960s, there was an overproduction of potash, which led to a global glut, which caused the potash industry to almost collapse. As a part of the solution, the government decided to establish the Potash Corporation of Saskatchewan in 1975. During the early 80s, the company struggled and accumulated $800 million in debt. Then, as a solution, the government decided to sell off its shares to private investors, and the company was a publicly traded company in 1989. As the prices of potash went up, the Potash Corporation became one of the most valuable companies in Canada by market capitalization, and today, the Potash Corporation of Saskatchewan is the biggest fertilizer producing company in the world, owning assets in Canada, Brazil, United States, and the Middle East.
Okay, now let's talk about what fertilizer is. There are three main components in fertilizer: nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. And there are two different types of fertilizer. There's organic and inorganic. Organic fertilizer is made of natural nutrients. Examples are guano, compost, peat moss, and manure. Inorganic fertilizers can be chemically manufactured through a process. Now this is very convenient because different crops need different amounts of these nutrients, and therefore the nutrients can be made in ratios that result in the demand that are needed. Now let's talk about why fertilizer is important. One of the things that we all know is that all living things need nutrients to survive. Now it is fertilizer that is going to replenish the nutrients into the soil. Furthermore, there is 75 million population growth each year in global population. This is because populations are expanding and cities are expanding, so the availability of arable land is at historically low levels. Furthermore, we want to talk about why fertilizer is really, really important. Why fertilizer is cash? Because fertilizer is a very sustainable way to produce food. See, fertilizer boosts crop yields, which means that you can use one field consecutively 1 year or another. Whereas before, there would have to be a 2 to 3 year wait period to be able to reuse the field. This leads to deforestation because farmers need to have available farming land to produce.
Talking about the growth potential of the fertilizer industry. The fertilizer industry has a huge growth potential, and we can grow because of the following reasons. First is the price increases. As you have seen, because of recession, most of the commodities and fertilizer minerals are falling down in their prices, but potash has remained high and competitive. The price of the potash in the beginning of 2008 was $300 per ton, and the current price of the potash is $800 million per ton, and it is expected to go to $1,500 per ton by 2020. Another reason is developing countries such as China and Brazil have underused fertilizer. Although these countries are the biggest fertilizer buyers of the world, still they have not fully shifted from manure to best quality fertilizers. So there is lots of hope of potential growth in those markets. Third is the significance of barriers of entry in the fertilizer industry. It takes about 7 years to set up a potash mine and get it finally into production. And also it takes $2.8 billion to set up a potash mine. So it's a very capital intensive business, and there has not been any new mine since last 30 years. Also, the record global crop production in 2008 has lowered the nutrient level in the soil. So the farmers may delay the application of fertilizers, but they will have to apply it so as to harvest, so as to get ready for the next harvesting season. And lastly, crop prices have rebounded from low levels since December 2008. So as the crop prices will go high, the farmers will have more in revenue and they will have more money to invest in fertilizers to get more yield. So now that we have explained to you how attractive the fertilizer industry is, we would like to tell you why Potash Corporation is the leader of this industry.
All right, so Potash Corp is mines, manufactures, and sells products. It deals with the three main nutrients, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphate. And with these, they produce fertilizers, animal feeds, and other industrial products. So for 2008, nitrogen accounted for 26% of their net sales. And for fertilizers, it helps build proteins, enzymes, and speeds plant growth. And for feed, it's a key component in DNA, RNA, and cell maturation. And for industrial purposes, it's an additive to plastics, resins, and adhesives.
The second ingredient is phosphate. Last year alone, phosphate consisted of 30% of 2008 net sales. In fertilizer, phosphate is used to help speed up the process of photosynthesis and also helps with the maturity of the crops. In the animal feed, it is mixed in to help with skeletal development and also muscle repair. And then finally, in industrial products, phosphate is used in soft drinks, food products, and other metal treatments.
So potassium, also known as potash, it accounted for 43% of their 2008 net sales. In fertilizer, it improves the overall quality of the crop, whereas nitrogen and phosphate, they're more engineered towards certain qualities. For feed, it improves animal growth and milk production, and then as well as industrial, it's an additive in food products, soaps, and water softeners. Also, in the global perspective, Potash Corp supplied 22% of the global potash supply. And as well, it also holds stakes in other major world producers. And as well, it holds some of the largest reserves in the world. It has one that they speculate will last them about a century.
So now let's get to the most exciting part of the presentation, the financials and stock statistics. So as of this morning, their stock was traded at $85 US, and which is trading way below its 52-week high of $241.62, and a bit higher than its 52-week low of $47.54. As you can see, the stock performance chart here for the past year, they reached their high last year, and then we entered into the recession. Like most commodity stocks, they took a dive at the end of 2008, and it went below $50 right there, and now it's on its way for a rebound. The S&P 500 is a benchmark for most investors. So what we did here, we compared POT with the S&P 500, and as you can see, since the beginning of the year, they've done significantly way better than the S&P 500. This is due to the record earnings and record sales that they posted in the last quarter of 2008, and the fact that potash prices remain at the record high at the end of the year. Now back to the stock statistics. You guys know that PE ratio is basically the price of the share divided by earnings per share. Theirs is at 7.8, which is at its low compared to last year's one of 25. And their earnings per share is at $10.65. We assume that most of their earnings come from operations. But by making that assumption, this number can often be misleading. This is true in the case of potash. They are not only the largest producer in the world, but they also hold large stakes in other companies. These investments, as of the end of 2009 January, account to $5.1 billion, which equates to around $16 per share of POT. And if you factor this into the PE ratio, it'll take this PE ratio even lower and make it even more attractive.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit more in depth about the PE ratio. As you can see from the slide, Potash Corp's PE ratio is just slightly above the industry average. Now, it's a bit of a discount if you take a look at it, because you need to factor in the status, because Potash Corp is a market leader, so that should be factored into its price. Also, you can see from the slide that SQM has a considerably higher PE ratio, and this has many explanations. One is that it is located in Chile, and recently international investments have been seen a little bit more attractive because of the weakening US dollar. But now what you can see from the slide is that actually Potash Corp is part owner of SQM. So therefore, if you were to purchase Potash stocks, you'd be able to reap the benefits of the South American crown jewel.
Next, we have the income statement from last 4 years. As you can see, in 2008, they have almost doubled their sales and tripled their net income. So they have really high profit and gross margins. Even though after the downturn and slowdown in the economy, Potash Corporation's potash sales have been on high levels and competitive levels.
Alright, so the balance sheet, and honestly it is one of the weaker parts of the company. As you can see for 2008, their total equity is lower than their total liabilities.